live episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to another live episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in true crime. It is not a tagline. It is our reality here, night in, night out, day in, day out, consistently bringing you the best panels in all of true crime. I am the Larry King of the true crime world. If I could only be so lucky interviewing the experts, I'm just kind of the dumb idiot with a microphone. I should have a better microphone, but I don't. But anyway, appreciate everybody being here, and we're going to jump into this tonight. We're getting to the proverbial light at the end of the tunnel. I have a feeling that we are not going to, that the defense here is going to wrap by Monday, if not Tuesday, and the jury is going to get this in their hands to chew on. We had Ben Chew last night, who successfully defended Johnny Depp in his defamation lawsuit. Brilliant legal mind. He was here last night, and I do think that the jurors will get this to deliberate / chew on as early as possibly Tuesday of next week. So we're almost there. For those who do not know, back on January 29th, 2022, Boston police officer John O'Keefe was found dead outside of a home at 34 Fairview Road in Canton, Massachusetts. And since then, with the help of some reporting by a very well-known controversial blogger, Turtle Boy, dare I say his name, this case blew up. And whether you like him or hate him, he's a reason, one of the reasons this is getting as much attention as it is. And since then, it has become one of the most divisive cases that I can recall outside of possibly O.J. Simpson. And he was found, John O'Keefe, that evening, 9th, 2022, out in the snow. His body temperature dropped to 80-something degrees. And I don't know, half the world at the time believed that Karen Reed, his girlfriend, hit him. And then after this conspiracy was put forth, there were a lot of people believing that the law enforcement officers that John O'Keefe was out with that night, a.k.a. Brian Higgins and Brian Albert, may have done something untoward that evening, a.k.a. getting a brawl, maybe possibly kill him. I have to say, I thought it was a ludicrous idea. I don't know what happened that night. No one knows what happened that night. I can say this. I do believe that those law enforcement officials are hiding something. That is not to say that they killed him. I don't necessarily believe that to be the case. I personally think that maybe Karen Reed accidentally hit John O'Keefe. But in any event, this has been an absolute circus of a trial from day one to now. And now we've got best guests here to break down what happened in court today and what they believe will happen moving forward as we wind this trial down. Are Timothy Jansen, that is his first initial, but he's also our Timothy Jansen because he does all of our Adelson coverage. He's a partner in the firm Jansen Davis that bears his name. He also spent 5 years as a federal prosecutor. Welcoming to the show for the very first time, and I hope not the last time, the legal scholar with all those books. It is Chase Hawk, and it is spelled C-H-A-C-E. It is not Chase with an S. He was born in Birmingham, Alabama, and he was raised in Augusta, Georgia. He's a distinguished attorney specializing actually in personal injury and wrongful death. And we're going to ask him why all the way down in Augusta, where they've got that fancy golf course that Tim Jansen is trying to weasel his way onto, why all the way down there he'd be interested in the case all the way up in Boston. And of course, last but not least, let me say this. Let me preface this by saying this is retired FBI Special Agent Jeff Wood. He took heat in his last show here. If there's any disrespect towards Jeff Wood, I'm laying down the law and we're booting you out. No matter what you think of what anybody says, be respectful. This guy was in Boston for 20 plus years, getting the most vicious gang members in the world off the streets. And he also served in the military. And he's also a very seasoned investigator. And he's smart. And he's a good guy. And both his parents served in Vietnam. and that's where they had baby Jeff afterwards. And Jeff, as I said, was a
Celtics fan, I'm sure.
I don't know. Are you a Celtics fan, Jeff? I don't think so. I think you're a Sixers
I
fan.
was in Philly.
Okay. Oh, you're from Philly.
But because Kyrie Irving did the Celtics wrong, and I couldn't root for Dallas, I had to root for the Celtics this year. Only time you'll ever catch me rooting for the Celtics.
Yeah. By the way,
fights.
Congrats to the all of you people up in Canton, Mass, and the surrounding area for the Boston Celtics. True story. When I was a freshman at Brandeis University, it was a long time ago, and the Lakers had won the NBA championship, and I wore a Lakers shirt on my first day to university in Waltham, Mass. And I was surrounded, and they ripped my shirt off, and they burned it in a tin garbage can. That is a true story. That's how Boston rolls. So that's how I'm going to roll. If anyone's talking smack about Jeff Wood, I'll tell you that right now. I'm in a feisty mood. It's Friday. I'm overtired, so I'm kind of out of my mind. But there we go. To you, Chase, starting with you and I love your folksy Southern accent, if I may say that. You're down in Augusta where there's civilized people, unlike the Northeast where I'm from. And what piqued your interest, PIQUED, what piqued your interest about this case, which is well north of you?
Yeah, I have a partner, Reed Sanders, who has a knack for picking out cases that have interesting issues. And this one, it eats away at people when they feel like there might be somebody in power that is abusing that power. And so those things become salacious. Those things are pique people's interest. And with the allegations that Turtle Boy kind of pushed out there into the social media, it raised our interest, and we thought that it might be something good to talk with our viewers about, because we're going to get to see something play out in real time and be able to see if some of those allegations are actually true and could be proven, or if this was somebody that was just trying to be elaborate and come up with a crazy scheme to get out of whatever situation they're in. I'm just kind of thankful that this scenario didn't happen down here, in part because if any of those investigators had a Southern accent like this, right, they would have been seen as being, fumbling idiots, hillbillies, don't know what they're doing. There's something about our accent that creates that perception, but from time to time, it does play out in our favor. People, can underestimate us, but so that's basically what's piqued our interest, and really since we became interested, it's only gotten bigger and more elaborate and more salacious from the very beginning.
Some of the women giving Chase love already. We're thinking about starting off STS singles, but I noticed already, because I'm an observant, perceptive person as a former broadcast reporter. I see a little gold band on that left hand of Chase, or I think it's a gold band. So everyone's settled down there.
That's right.
Jeff Wood, another fan favorite. We did see that happen, Chase, by the way, in the Murdoch trial with SLED. People, thought that they were bumbling the investigation, and we're seeing that now up in the Northeast in Boston. Look at Rosemary Gallagher. I listened to the trial today, sometimes accused of not watching. That's true. But if I'm not watching, I am listening, which I had to do today because I do have things I have to attend to and cannot sit in front of a TV 24/7. But Rosemary Gallagher, Yannetti said closing statements Tuesday. As I said, I believe they will wrap up on Monday, and then this is going to go right to the jury. And some people are predicting a fast deliberation. Jeff Wood, you're retired FBI. You came on this show and you said you're very cynical about this elaborate conspiracy, as am I, because it would take a lot of people. But the Commonwealth certainly stumbling a lot. Have you had any change of heart regarding any of this?
I think, again, it's what I've said all along, in the sense that their job is to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And I don't know if they're going to get over mistakes that were made by the Canton Police Department, the inappropriate investigation, like some of the things that Proctor was doing. One, he had connections to the family. He didn't recuse himself. he's sending those completely inappropriate, unprofessional text messages to his friends. So I think that's blown it up. I also think the prosecution, most likely because they haven't had to deal with it, but I know as our federal prosecutor will, I'm sure, will weigh in on here soon. In the cases I did, you bring out all the bad things first. The prosecutor knew the dirt that Proctor done and other steps that were done, and I don't think he did a good job of bringing that out and taking the flames and the fire that the defense could then go after. So the first time they're hearing it is by the defense bringing up, look at all these horrible things. And I think that's just thrown into the jury's mind this reasonable doubt. And I think at the end of the day, I come back and say, I agree with you. There's things that don't make sense. Not everything always makes sense. I think there's things that are done improperly. I just don't think the prosecution has overcome that. And I think you can't convince me. And now, if you can prove to me, but that's not the job of the defense. Their job is to do reasonable doubt. But if they were to be able to come out and say, here's our proof that this is the cover-up, and you had all the police officers who did all the crime scene, all the police officers who did the investigation, the EMTs, all this huge, massive amount of people all in on a conspiracy to put an innocent woman into jail. If you can prove that, I will be more than happy to say I was wrong, and they did have a conspiracy. I just don't see that kind of conspiracy here. I think that we're going to probably get either a non-guilty or a hung jury because I don't think we've got it great. I mean, but you look at the defense, right? Did they cross-examine any of the DNA witnesses? None. Why? Because they know they can't. They went after the people they had to go after. I think that sews it in. Do we get justice for the police officer at the end of the day? I don't think so. I think it's going to go on. We're not going to get anything, and it's just a shame because I think there's so many mishandled steps here.
Well put. And I tend to agree with a lot of what you said. Tim Jansen, what about what Jeff Wood just said? The defense did not cross these DNA experts. Is that a shrewd move on the defense because maybe they feared that would just obviously play against them, but also underscore the fact that maybe there is some DNA link to Karen Reed here?
Well, first, Jeff, thanks for your service. I know as an FBI agent and military, you sacrificed you and your family, so thank you. Listen, a prosecutor has to have two roles. One, he's got to be able to try a case. Secondly, he's got to be able to decide if he has a case. He needs to look at a case before he brings charges. You're not supposed to seek convictions. You're supposed to seek justice. Now, if he looked at this case and saw everything that Jeff and we've talked about and he saw all this, he should have never brought the case. Okay. The feds don't do that because we have the FBI and we have ATF, we have agents, and we take cases we know are good. We double check everything. These cases, and I agree that not everybody conspired in this, but I don't think you need everybody to conspire for this to happen. I think you need the people at the crime scene, and then you needed a rogue investigator who had a relationship with the people at the crime scene, right? So, and you ask, how did the DNA? Well, we know that part of the pieces to the back car were transported back to the scene by the investigator, the same one that has a relationship with him. People lie, but you know what? Science doesn't. And science and technology always catches people like it did in the Murdoch case. In this case, we know, I can tell you, Jeff, I don't know how many scenes these injuries are not from a car accident. These injuries to this body were not by her backing up on him. Those are clearly some dog bites or animal bites. The head injuries to the head, for his shoe to come off, that car would have to be going at least 50 miles an hour for the shoe to come away from a person. And I look at the evidence on the Apple, shows where he was going down, going upstairs. And then they say it happened at 12:45. Well, we know that Karen Reed's car, her internet, are attached to his house, and it physically could not happen because she logged into his internet at a time that she couldn't have committed the crime. Now, they're not saying that's wrong, But how do you explain that? I mean, it
Well-
physically couldn't have happened the way these witnesses are saying.
Now, what I'm hearing, and I don't know because I did not go back and listen to it, but I do know people that went back and listened to Adam Lally, the assistant district attorney's opening statements, and he says around 12:45. He doesn't say it's specifically 12:45, but you're seeing here Lally's own witness testified Karen Reed was at John O'Keefe's house at 12:36, yet Lally said J.O. was hit at 12:45. I mean, this is obviously on the Commonwealth. Chase, you care to comment on this? Because that's a number that's floated out there. But and I haven't gone back and listened to the opening statements. I just haven't had the time, to be totally honest. But apparently Lally says it's around that time period, not specifically that time period.
Right. And I'll start off by, again, Jeff, again, thank you for your service and everything you do to keep us all safe. But I wanted to say that this is part of the reason why being part of the FBI requires such a much more of a stringent standard. Okay. If you're going to be regularly handling serious matters, you can't have the type of character or integrity, right, that would allow something like what happened with Proctor in this case. Why? Because it really matters whether or not John O'Keefe's family gets justice in this case, right? Had those things never happened, those text messages never occurred, if he didn't text his buddies about what she looked like, if he wasn't texting his superiors, inappropriate things, trying to influence the medical examiner's determination about a homicide and stuff like that. If he wasn't doing any of those things, this case would be much, much stronger. His behavior here actually caused him to basically be the star witness for the defense, in my opinion. Because when it comes to a jury, you are not, people think of themselves as, thinking, people that have feelings, right? But really, you have feelings that you're an animal that has feelings and that can also think. And when you have a feeling about somebody, you immediately start to assign, ideas, beliefs about them. And what do you think those jurors felt about the person who's supposed to be leading this investigation? What do you think they think about his integrity, his honesty, whether or not he'll abide by the oaths that he takes when he takes a particular office? What do you think they think about him? Immediately. They don't, the words that he used, if I were to use them in my house, there might be a case for my wife. I might catch a few shots for that one, right? But, that was really disappointing to me. And when the governor of the state comes out on the day that you give testimony and comments on it and how it's a black eye for Massachusetts, that's a bad day. Okay. And really, I almost feel like, someone shouldn't be convicted with the investigation.
Oh,
there should be a lot of evidence. Even if there's a lot of evidence that shows she might have been involved in this, all these things she said, I hit him. Did I hit him? She might have some responsibilities, but it's more important to the system that someone is not convicted of doing something like this with the poor evidence collection, all the evidence of impropriety, of just poor conduct, all of that, I think, is going to lead to an acquittal here. And I think that's what should happen.
I think that's what I've been saying. I think when you look back and say, just because based on what I've seen, I'm not, I think that she's involved. I don't think it's like that. I said the prosecution hasn't done their job. Why? Because of those reasons, right? I don't like the guy listening to him. I'm like, who would do that, right? Even in any case you work, if we have to discuss something important, we don't get on emails, we don't get on a text. You pick up the phone and talk to the person, so that way you can say, okay, this is what's going on, this is what I think I need to do, blah, blah, blah. But you don't want to send a case in point. In Afghanistan, we captured a terrorist who just killed an American and 30 other people. I finally got to interrogate him 3 days later, right? When I showed up to the interrogation, he had a big black eye. I know what the Afghans did when they interrogated him, right? They beat him. Next thing I know, I get an email because I want to try and extradite him back to the States. I get an email from headquarters. Are there any signs of torture or anything? again, that's when you pick up the phone, because you don't want something written down like that, right? It's like, and I can explain, yeah, the Afghans tortured them. We didn't. We read them rights. We did it right. That's what Proctor should be doing. He didn't do it at all. And as you said, here are those, he has no integrity. He doesn't, who's going to believe him? And that's why I said the prosecution, I don't think, has proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And based on our jury system, based on the way our Constitution is read, the prosecution needs to prove beyond a reasonable doubt to convict. And if we don't do it, you don't do it. And the person doesn't get convicted. That's just the bottom line. I agree with you totally. I just don't believe in the huge conspiracy that they're framing her per se. I just don't think they're going to be able to prove that she did it. And that's where we come to the point of, will we get justice? Will we ever know the full truth of what happened? And will justice be brought to that family?
And right now, I'm not so sure that that's going to happen. PJ Durkin, to Tim Jansen, by the way, happy, I guess, summer solstice. Today is the longest day of the year out there, so enjoy the sunlight. Can you object, Tim, during closing arguments? I think you are able to, but it is frowned upon by you defense attorneys and prosecutors. What is the answer, Tim Jansen? You
certainly can do it. It's frowned upon. It has to be a really important issue for you to do. The juries don't like it. The judge doesn't like it. But I've done it in the past. Usually when someone's getting way off base, when they mention evidence that was subject to a motion in limine, you have to not only object, you have to go to sidebar and ask for a mistrial. So there are times when you have to do that. I don't like doing it, and I don't think it's good form, but sometimes you got to do it.
Jimmy McNutty, he's people accuse me of having a bromance. He's been a trial watcher since the early 90s. He was at the OJ trial. He believes Karen Reed is responsible. He's open about it. Here he is with his comment of one of many, I'm sure, tonight. The medical examiner, Bella, was asked, were you pressured by the investigators to change your opinion on Manor? She answered no. Of course, Proctor, it's known, called her a whack job. And if she was, she said she would ignore the pressure. So that is something I was going to get to, but Jimmy McNutty beat me to it. Chase, the Commonwealth did rest today. It is important to note, after 8 weeks, it was 68 witnesses. We have, as they call them, a law tuber, in other words, an attorney who has a YouTube channel. He's been a best guest of ours. I really like him. His name is Ian Runkle, lives in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And he tweeted the following. He said, late on the Karen Reed trial today, because I'm watching the Baldwin hearings. Alec Baldwin's soon to be in some trouble. But here we go. The medical examiner clearly does not think it's a pedestrian accident. She does not buy the Commonwealth theory. She said that she didn't think it was necessarily a vehicle accident. Why in the hell would Lally have her up there saying that? I mean, I've heard game over many times from different defense attorneys, particularly after Proctor was on the stand. But is this really game over with your own medical examiner saying that on the stand?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. It's like, what is he going to do? The medical examiner is the one that processed it. What does it look like if you go out and you hire a second one? Because this one doesn't, say what you want him to say. All right. She's got her opinions. She made her determination. And in part, yeah, of course, that helps the defense. But I'll say this about Lally. From the beginning, I've had some questions about Lally from his opening. He's been very, he's done his job like clocking in to work at a factory. Mm-hmm. No passion, but here's the thing. He knew the case he had going in. Right now, there's probably a lot of pressure on him to bring the case because it's a police officer. There's a lot of pressure to get justice in those particular cases. But honestly, I think that this is an average citizen. There's not going to be this kind of case brought against him. Second-degree murder. Okay. I think that they might be going after her for manslaughter or something like that. But yeah, the medical examiner stuck to her guns, and she does have some integrity there. Yeah, I don't care if you're trying to convict somebody. This is what I think. That's what you're supposed to do as an expert witness. That's what you're supposed to do as an investigator, to bring the facts of the case to bear and put them before the jury. Yeah, she basically testified today that, yes, those wounds to the back of his hand, those are consistent with defensive wounds. She has seen people that have been in a fist fight that ended up dying, right? And she's seen them to have those boxer fractures and bruises on the back of their hands. She confirmed all of the information about how he didn't have injuries to his knees, to his thighs, to other parts you would think would be damaged in this type of being hit with a car like this. And so, I mean, I think it was over before that, but they just didn't do a good enough job in explaining how this happened. The accident reconstructionist was poor, to say the least. And they had no explanation for those scratch marks whatsoever, in my opinion. They didn't produce really any evidence that was compelling as to how those occurred, given what occurred to the actual clothing he had on. That clothing had puncture wounds in it. I would expect if someone is traveling a car very, very fast and they hit me and it's bad enough to break glass and cut me, the clothing is going to have some sort of cuts or tears in it. And those are inferences you can make from looking at the actual physical evidence. So he didn't have the physical evidence. He doesn't have the expert testimony. And so he is, in a bad way. And I think that might have been why he showed up at opening and sounded it as if he was reading a book report.
Kiss is here speaking about that punctured clothing. Jeff Wood, to you. There are some things that favor the Commonwealth. This is one of them, Jeff. Tiny pieces of taillight discovered in Officer John O'Keefe's clothing, consistent with broken pieces from Reed's taillight, plus multiple witnesses saying that they heard Karen Reed say, I did it. Every time I say that, people bark back that maybe she was asking the question. But there are some things that stand out in favor of the Commonwealth. Is there just too much reasonable doubt to overcome this, Jeff Wood?
I think there is. I think at the end of the day, we all want to say law enforcement is great. I spent 20 plus years in the FBI. I spent 2+ years in the State Department. They're a law enforcement agency. There are times in my case, I remember once around, we all make mistakes. It's what you do with them, how you fix them. That was never done here. It wasn't done. And I think when you boil down to Proctor and everything he's done, I don't see how the jury will ever look beyond that. I don't. And I think for that, no matter how much we want to say if we're believing that Karen Reed's guilty, as I said, I think Lally has not done his job. I mentioned the very first day of this trial, I said, he sounded so boring to me. I wanted to go to sleep during his opening. I don't think that's going to pan out for him. I don't. I think this has been a disaster of a trial for the prosecution because I don't think you can overcome any of the positive evidence that they may be able to show she did this, right? I just don't think you can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt.
So Jeff's saying that the negatives here far outweigh what the Commonwealth can bring with a possible guilty verdict. Tim Jansen, I got a few questions for you. Have you seen moments where the jury shocks the world, to use the fight terminology? There is still a chance they could come back with a conviction on lesser charges. What would you put that percentage at? Looks like very, very low.
2%.
2%.
You have to understand they're wanting to take this woman's life, right? At least send her to prison for the rest of her life. And she's in a courtroom with the highest standard that our government has to prove in a criminal case, beyond a reasonable doubt. And we're talking about how the state has messed up this case. And have they really messed up this case, or has Lally tried to fix all the crap that he brought forward? And he can't fix it because the witnesses, the chain of custody was terrible. The investigation was not done by an independent, objective investigator. He has a relationship with the people at the home. The medical examiner doesn't even buy the death that they're claiming. The investigator claims, so she's a whack job. So this lawyer has to put up these people that undermine his own case in direct. And then you're wondering why Lally can't do his job or is not doing it very effectively. And what they've done is they've given so many openings to the defense. And you have a good, smart defense lawyer. They've got money and they prepared and they've attacked where they need to attack. And it just makes them look bad. Lally comes up and tries to fix it. And he ends up undermining his own case because his witnesses disagree with his opening and his theory. It's just bad. The guy, I mean, you know, Jeff knows this. The feds would never take a case like this. That would never get prosecuted. When I was a prosecutor, we would say, no, good luck, have the state do it. There's too much, especially with Proctor. We would never take a case with Proctor as the lead agent on the case. And I just think the evidence collection really tainted all the evidence. You know, I go back and look at the timelines and then how his body got there and then how his phone just happened to be underneath his body. How did that happen? You got deleted messages, deleted phone calls. You got timeline is completely off. And then people were saying that she was guilty because she wanted to get a DUI lawyer. That's a big difference between getting a DUI lawyer and hiring someone for murder to represent you in a murder case. And I know sometimes law enforcement believe if you hire a lawyer, you must be guilty. And I will say that's true until the law enforcement officers that I had retained me when they were under investigation. They understand how the system works.
By the way, go ahead, Jeff. No, go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, the one thing is, too, though, in this kind of case, this isn't the case the FBI investigates, right? Because I'm out, and if I was in, I wouldn't even be allowed to be on the show, right? I'm retired. That enables me to come on. But a murder case in this manner is not a case that the FBI investigates. So
unless it happened at a military base.
If this was, let's say it was a part of a bigger case that this came in and we could use this as a predicate for a RICO case, there's no way, if I was the lead investigator from the FBI coming, I would say that we're not going, I would recommend not taking it just because I saw what happened. And I've had arguments with local police officers on things where I thought they were going wrong and saying, no, that this is a violation of the Constitution, right? You know, we're violating the Fifth Amendment right to remain silent by what you're about to do. So I agree with you on that sense.
Tim, you're the federal prosecutor here. Anna M has a super chat. So if Karen Reed gets off, if she is found not guilty, how soon do they start arresting all these people? Since this is a conspiracy, will it be a RICO trial like Young Thug? Will they go arrest Colin and Allie at college? Tim, what will happen? What's going to happen if she's acquitted? Because I can assure you that Turtle Boy is going to turn up the heat on those people, saying, look, I told you so. This is a conspiracy. Now even the jury has found this to be the case. Is there going to be legal repercussions after this for those people?
Now, I know the feds are actually looking into this case, right? Now, if the feds, say an FBI agent or someone else, can get Jennifer McCabe or one of the peoples at the house to come forward and admit somehow that what she testified was not true, right? And that, or give them some evidence. Otherwise, there's not going to be any civil case. No plaintiff lawyer will take this case. And they're going to be hard pressed to prove he's not going to take this case. But if the feds can get one of these witnesses that come forward and say, okay, this is what really happened, and then changes their testimony, then you're going to see an avalanche of lawsuits.
This is an interesting question to Chase here. Anna M. You know, jurors are always directed to just follow the evidence, Chase. Are jurors allowed to use common sense and logic when deliberating or no? What part of that are they able to, how much of their own logic can they use before it oversteps the bounds of, I guess, some sort of bias?
Not only can they do it, they're required to use their common sense and logic. They're absolutely, that's part of the actual duty to serve on a jury, is to take in the evidence, consider the credibility of witnesses, and consider the evidence that was presented before you, and apply the law the way the judge gives it to you. For those of you that are going to be watching when they actually, stop presenting evidence, everybody closes, and the judge starts doing the request to charge, go ahead and take a break, okay? Because that's going to be like 2 hours of the judge reading about all the laws the jurors are supposed to apply, and it puts most people to sleep. But yeah, you're supposed to consider all of those things, or use all of those things in your deliberations. And with regard to the civil case, I was trying to think about this. I was like, usually when I have a gut feeling about what's being done to this person is wrong, right? For them to botch the investigation this way and bring these charges, even though I always know that somewhere in there, there is a law that allows me to recover for it. And the only thing I can think of in this particular case for Karen Reed is a claim based on Trooper Proctor's spreading information about her medical conditions. So he obviously had some sort of inside knowledge about her medical conditions, put that out there. Could be considered a HIPAA violation, but I'll tell you what's going to happen.
He's not subject to HIPAA. That's only for medical. That's only the medical profession.
Okay. Well, then he's all clear. But I was trying to think of some way, because even if she does recover, let's say she does recover and find some way. Every state has a State Tort Claims Act. Bringing this type of case, doing an investigation, it all bars all that. You can't bring that kind of thing against the state at all. But when someone does something to this level, it always brings up, this idea of like, is there an exception to the rule? But even if she does do that and recover, a civil claim will immediately be brought by the family of John O'Keefe. And just like you saw in the O.J. Simpson trial, acquitted on the murder and then found liable for causing the death of Ron Goldman and his wife. And so any money she would ever recover in a civil case would immediately go back to the family of John O'Keefe. And that's the only way I can think of where the family of John O'Keefe is actually going to see some measure of justice in this. So,
but does John O'Keefe's and they never really want to go forward?
No,
do they really want to go forward after all this questionable stuff? They sold the house. They got rid of their dog. All this stuff. The house. Something just smells wrong.
Yeah.
Right. Well, why would you get rid of your dog? Why would you sell the house less than $50,000? Why didn't they not go into the house? I mean, nothing adds up.
Yeah, it's a real head scratcher. Although people yell at me and say no, it's not, because it was a conspiracy and they were beat up. But Kylie Jackson Bell here, lest you think we are not the future here at STS. She's in Australia where it's the next day. So there you go. Ned Smith reminding us about the butt dials. I think there are 6 butt dials at least, a minimum. Where did that go? Here we go. Where I can't catch up to Ned Smith here. The butt dials right there. But Tim, let's go back to this for a minute though. What about the O'Keefe family? Will they file civilly if Karen Reed is found not guilty? Will they go after Karen Reed? Karen Reed comes from an affluent family, a wealthy family.
But does she have money? Not whether her family. Does she have money? Plaintiff lawyers will tell you they're not going to bring suits to get paper judgments.
She worked in finance. She worked in finance. She was a professor. I don't think she's destitute, but I don't know what she has. I mean, it's always tough to tell. But
she's paying her lawyers now. She may be broke.
Yeah, well, she's paying her. By the way, Tim Jansen. How much would I charge her? How much? Yeah, how much is she? How much is she paying her attorneys for this?
Oh, I'm sure he got $1.5 million.
$1.5 million.
Now, he might take less because he's on national TV and it's a winner. Sometimes you take cases that are good because you get publicity, and if you win, he's a rock star, right? So you take a little less money to get the case.
Well, someone said the other day.
You take more because you're gonna lose. Well,
someone said
about that.
Tim Jansen the other day. Someone said $250,000, $250,000. No way, it's that little.
No way.
No
I
way.
wouldn't charge that in Tallahassee. No way.
And Alan Jackson's got he got Kevin Spacey off. He prosecuted the Phil Spector case. So the guy's got a history. So today started, by the way, with Dr. Rini Scorti-Bello. She is the medical examiner. And she went ahead and said she did not feel coerced by Trooper Proctor. We talked about that a little bit. But Jeff Wood, to you, she also said his manner of death was undetermined and that she could not decide between accident or homicide. Again, I know we're talking about a death, so I don't want to be insensitive, but is this the death knell for the Commonwealth? Is this where it really became an impossible victory for them?
I think it was. I go back to the opening. I wasn't impressed. I think this. Every time we put somebody on, or I shouldn't say we, because we didn't, right? Well, we did. We're the people. We're the government. If you read the Constitution, no, we the people form this. But with that being said, the government puts on their witnesses, and you look at most of them, right? You've got Proctor and all the bad things that happen with there. You go back to the Canton Police Department. The state police for Massachusetts are the lead investigators in almost every city in Massachusetts. And then you have the Canton police who aren't supposed to, but they take out the snow blower instead of to try and blow some snow off to see if they can find some evidence. I guarantee you the state police would have said, what are you doing? Stop that, right? So, I mean, every time you do something like that, I mean, you want to give them some kudos for trying to think outside the box of what to do during a blizzard to gather evidence. But because they don't know what they're doing, they just make mistake after mistake that compounds and gives the reasonable doubt, which is what we have here. And so I think, you go back to day one. Very lackadaisical, boring opening. The first few police officers who came on who said, oh, yeah, we did this. And then I've never used evidence tape. And that could be possible. Maybe you haven't. But anyone who has knows what a pain in the ass, excuse the language, knows what a pain to get evidence tape and try and seal stuff. It's a pain. And I always would break it, have to start over again. You get these little pieces all over your hand, right? Taking solo cups. I mean, again, thanks for thinking outside the box, but you don't use solo cups and then you don't seal them and then you just don't leave them in your office unsealed, unsecured. You put them in a safe, lock it up, do something to say, this is my safe, I've locked it, it's secure, right? None of that happened. So you've got the reasonable doubt from the very beginning. I don't think the prosecution has ever been close to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. So I think this is just another little piece that goes along with all that other reasonable doubt.
But by the way, Jimmy McNutty is not like Modine, who is America's favorite troll, who's in our chat a lot. But Jimmy McNutty, I think, truly believes this. He's saying here, Karen is acquitted. I promised SDS chat I would reveal my first name. That's not such a big deal. Jimmy McNutty did that already today, and a picture of me on my Twitter profile instead of Dominic West. But Jimmy, let us know if you honestly, in the depths of your heart, believe that she will still be found guilty on some of these charges, if not first the second-degree murder, if on the involuntary manslaughter. Please let us know if you still believe that. I'm curious to see what you say. Back to this, Chase. I mean, you brought up Adam Lally, and, I was in broadcast news. Tim is a very successful criminal defense attorney. You can't go on broadcast news and say, hey, everybody, how are you? It's great to be here. And Tim Jansen never does that in the courtroom. You got to come with energy. You've got to come with enthusiasm. So what do you think is going on here? Do you think that is this a personality flaw, which is a big problem because this is his job? Is this like I don't know, maybe a passive aggressive move on his part because he didn't want the case? Is he doing his best? What do you think's happening here?
So that's a good thing. That's a good thing to talk about because I talked with my partners today. We did our podcast earlier today, And we
Oh,
talked
by the way,
about
what's your podcast?
Oh,
and where do we find-
it's called the Layman's Law School. It's not as nearly as informative. We don't have nearly the guests. Basically, it's the partners in the law firm. If we're going to get together, because of how busy we are, we got 4 different offices. It's going to be because it's on the calendar. And so
hold on, your southern accent tripped me up. It's called the layman's. What is it?
The Layman's Law School. Yeah, we try to eliminate the legalese with the way we discuss the issues, and we talk about the broader picture, kind of like a little bit of like this. But what we talked about in there is the fact that say, okay, if we look at the defense, you have Alan Jackson, you have Yannetti. There's I'm not sure what her name is. There's a young lady that's working with them. Yeah. At least, and they're splitting up the workload, and that makes it so you can be more effective. It's like, why in the world isn't Lally doing this? This is a complex case. This is a lot of work, right? And I'm not 100% sure that Lally didn't know exactly what kind of case he has. He knows exactly what kind of evidence is going to come out, and he's protecting his team. He doesn't want to do all of the crosses and all of the directs and all of the openings and all that stuff. But no, usually, when we try cases and we have a criminal division here and I sit second chair, the prosecution will split up stuff. They'll have one DA assigned and they'll have another one that comes in to do expert testimony or something to that effect. But in a case like this, with this kind of coverage, it seems to me like Lally knew from the beginning what kind of case he had. And he's actually maybe just not wanting to put any of his less experienced team out there to be on the firing squad for what he knew was going to come by the end of this case. And so if that's what he's doing, that explains a lot.
Joel,
Chase, how are you so busy in Augusta, Chase? Everyone is so refined like you. Who's getting into trouble down there?
He's plaintiff's lawyer.
Look here, people make mistakes every day.
Good people make bad decisions.
Exactly, all the time. And
Tim, I'm going to let you back. Tim, let me just get this comment out. And then I got questions for you too, Tim. But Jimmy McNutty, deep down, this is his answer. I think the jury is ignoring the noise and does not care if Lally is boring. Truth is boring. Lies of conspiracy is exciting. Common sense wins. Who knows, man? If this comes back another way than 99% of you think, Jimmy McNutty is going to have a field day with all of us. But go ahead, Tim Jansen.
So, Joel, prosecutors don't need to be flamboyant. They've got the evidence on their case. All they have to be is organized, tell their story, and get the truth out. Defense lawyers have to be flamboyant. They have to be able to undermine the case. And he doesn't have to be flamboyant and outgoing. I disagree. I think Lally wanted this case. There are prosecutors that want to take a case like this national TV because they can make a name for themselves. Otherwise, he should be splitting it up. We had the same thing with Dan on the Markell case, right? Mm-hmm. He should have split that up. It killed him doing that case. Prosecutor in the Donna Adelson trial, they're going to have multiple prosecutors, not just one person. Trials are tough. And there's got to be a reason why Lally is doing everything himself. It's not effective. It's ineffective. And you think prosecutors have motives just like defense lawyers have motives. Are they doing it for money? Are they doing it for fame? Is he trying to get convictions, make his name so he can run for office? Who knows? But
yeah, I'm curious. There's got to be a press conference after this case is over, and hopefully we're going to find out. Tim Jansen, I got to ask you here. We love you, Joel, but we're really here for Tim. Love Carrie and Kayla in the grooming department. Is this your dog's groomers that are comment? Are they your dog? Is that
Carrie is my groomer, and Windsor's getting his summer haircut right now, and Carrie loves his show. And she couldn't make it. And I think Carrie's grandmother asked me for my autograph at your book signing. And I laughed if someone wanted my autograph, but it's funny, but that's nice of Carrie.
I got to tell you, the people of Tallahassee are the nicest people that I have met on this book tour. That could all change Sunday, though. We are doing a book signing at the Oxford Exchange in Tampa. We're doing a live podcast at 3:30. Carmen and I were on Fox News here in Tampa at noon today. We were yelling at each other, and the anchor, who's from the South, like Chase, a refined woman, was like, who the hell are these two people on my set yelling back and forth that she didn't know what to do. She just said, y'all are so funny. Jeff Wood, go ahead.
I was just going to say and add, I've seen prosecutors who will actually dismiss a case or dismiss the charges, right? It surprised me if Lally really thought this was such a boring case, or not a boring, he knew it was a dump of a case, right? And he knew all the problems. He knew he would get a conviction. Why didn't he just dismiss the charges and say, okay, we'll go after for drunk driving? You got the witness that she was drinking all night. She got in the car. We took the blood at 8 or 9 o'clock the next morning, and she was still right there. It would put her blood limit here when she drove him. If that's the point, I think he still thought he could win the case. I just don't think he's done a great job during this trial.
And Tim brings up a really good point. I was obviously wondering the same thing, which is if they've got the resources of this prosecutor's office, why in the hell is he doing everything solo? But this is a Tim Jansen or a Jeff Wood question. So autopsy photos were shown today. And by the way, I'm going to get to this right after this, but I posted a photo of Mrs. O'Keefe, who's been in the gallery every day. And when they were talking about the autopsy yesterday, she had to leave the room. And I will tell you what I posted and some of the reactions, which is why this case makes me sick to my stomach sometimes. But Tim Jansen, to you first on this. As she was reviewing these autopsy photos, Judge Beverly Cannoni warned the jurors, you cannot decide this case based on emotion or sympathy from these pictures. I assume that's a very standard warning, Tim Jansen. However, what does it do to jurors when they see photos like this?
Well, it makes them jurors do the right thing, and they're in a murder case. They're going to do the right thing, and they're going to try to get it right because they want to go home and sleep at night. And in the back of their mind, they're thinking that could be a friend or a family member. I want to do this right. I want to make sure if something happened, I want to prosecute the right people. They truly try to do that. But you have to give them something that they feel they can go to sleep at night feeling they convicted this woman beyond a reasonable doubt when they have doubt. And the judge is going to read those instructions, and the defense lawyer is going to say, if you have a reasonable doubt, you must acquit. And I think the jurors are going to basically say that. And it's not wrong. It's not wrong because we don't want to convict somebody and to send them to prison if they're innocent. Now, remember, most of the people that have gotten off death row, most of all the people have because they were eyewitness cases, right? They were all eyewitness cases, and DNA came back and exonerated them. What is the weakest case? Eyewitness testimony. Circumstantial evidence, fingerprint scientists, that's the evidence. And when you have a murder case and your medical examiner cannot tell you what the cause of death is, you're already 50 points behind. First things they want, how did they die? Who did it? They can't even tell you how he died.
Martin Smallwood, who's done amazing work on the Suzanne Morphew case with Barry Morphew, the husband, who's now being, I'm sure, looked at again. He was previously going to be tried for murder, and he's been covering that case. From the Republic of Ireland, he says Lally was handed the poison chalice here. Very Irish way of presenting this, but I get what he's saying. To the Southern gentleman, to Chase here. So I posted this tweet yesterday. It was just a photo of Mrs. O'Keefe looking really solemn, and I was disgusted by some of these tweets, and I'm going to call these people out. Vicky, I don't have a last name here. This was her tweet in response to my tweet. Rumor has it that she, meaning Mrs. O'Keefe, talked worse to her own son, John O'Keefe. It's possible that she's finally hearing herself. Shame on you, Mom. Then another one. This one takes a shot at me too. Uncle Adam, I'm exploiting a woman who was conned by her son's real killers, the McAlberts. Those book sales of yours, meaning mine, must really be off. Hashtag grifter. Uncle Adam, I'd like to smack you in the nose if I saw you. Let me tell you that. B2 Plantsman. Really, Joel? John O'Keefe was playing games with her. You're going to get flack for this statement. What about feelings for Karen? She wasn't even the kid's mother. She was good to them, and John looks like he took advantage of her. And then a final one here by Sarah Kelly. She should be ashamed at how John treated Karen. He was no angel. Chase, I find this really disgusting. Here's a mother who's grieving. I don't know the backstory of the family. She's being told about literally how her son's brain is being sliced apart in an autopsy, and she's looking forlorn. And you've got these rabid cretins on Twitter taking shots at the mother. What has happened to civility here, and what has happened to, respecting the victims' families?
Well, I can give you some statistics, and it's important for us in the law in part because every interaction we have in any case, just about, it's almost our job to make one side really unhappy. So half the people we interact with in our profession are going to be upset with us, even if we win and do exactly what we're supposed to. And then you have to realize that up to 20% of the population doesn't have an IQ above 83. And even with those people, the people that have the IQ above 83, whose opinion you should consider, right? That's not accounting for how many people are just heartless, unempathetic. But it basically shows, in my opinion, a lack of experience in dealing with these issues. It's totally fine to be a defense attorney and advocate passionately for Karen Reed, but I guarantee you, Alan Jackson and the whole defense team has a ton of sympathy for that family, John O'Keefe's family, and they are heartbroken.
I agree with
heartbroken that the case has, in their opinion, been brought against the wrong person, and that they're not going to get justice. So we take this thing very seriously as far as the institution of justice, because it says who we are as a people.
Yeah. In fact, if you saw,
I agree with you.
You saw Jackson when he was cross-examining Proctor. He said, "Shame on you," because I think Jackson is hoping they can find out who actually did it. I think to defend your client, but I think he actually believes it. After you don't get this much evidence that's contradictory to the state's case. You don't normally in a normal case get that kind of evidence. And it's
speaking of that, Tim, do you recall a case where there's so much sort of contrary / conflicting evidence?
Yeah, there was, and I was going to bring it up, and I'll think back again.
Yeah. Okay. From Crystal Wynn here to Jeff, I'm going to throw this question to you, and then you can give us your thought. But she says it's going to get real ugly when the verdict comes back. Now, if she is found guilty on some lesser charges or possibly the second-degree murder, all hell is going to break loose, I think. Jeff, your thoughts on what could happen with a verdict that does not go, the way that some people would like it to go, and whatever your comment was.
I think that, again, I just want to add to what everyone's already said, and I think it goes to this question that you just posed overall. I think we've come to a point in our country where we're allowing our feelings to get so ahead of us, where we believe so strongly we can't have civil conversations and disagree, and then at the end of the day say, okay, again, I don't agree with you. I want to wait to see everything happen. I may be upset, but at the end of the day, hey, it is what it is, right? We're fighting, we're picking, we're being so mean to one another now overall, over everything. It's not just this case, it's our society right now. And it's a shame because to me, we should be able to agree to disagree, right? And just, okay, I've said my thoughts, your thoughts, and at the end of the day, let the system work and let the jury come back and say the prosecution failed, the defense or the prosecution won, right? They make a decision. And then we live with it. We have to say, hey, the prosecution failed here, or the prosecution did enough. I don't think the prosecution did, but we have to be able to say, okay, this is what happened. This is the outcome. This is what makes our country so great, and then be peaceful about it. But we're not. That's where I think it's a shame because, again, you look at this, what Turtle Boy has done with his things, and you've got younger people who are somehow tied to this family that are being harassed by Turtle Boy's followers. Why is that happening? It shouldn't be happening, right? I can be passionate and say she's been framed or whatever, but let's not pick on people who have who should be picked on, right? Let's just wait to see what we have.
Chase, here's an interesting question. I don't think this is going to happen, but if it was a hung jury, would the Commonwealth go after her again, do you think, Chase?
I think that they may, but it would be a lesser offense. I think it would be unlikely. And I think that's probably a better question for Tim to answer. I have mostly handled civil and done some criminal defense with my father earlier in my career, but I've been out of that for quite some time. But when they get a black eye like this, the facts of the case aren't going to change. The evidence in the case isn't likely to change. And, with all the effort they put in and all the money, if they can't do it now, I don't think they're going to want to go through this type of thing again publicly anyway. So I think that this will not happen again. No.
So, Joe, this is behind the scenes. This is what happens.
Yeah.
To get a hung jury, prosecutors are going to find out from the jury what the split was, how close it was for a conviction, how close it was for a not guilty. Magbonawa trial, the first one, it was 11-1 conviction. So they easily retried that case. If this is like a 9 to 3 for acquittal, they probably won't retry it.
There you go. Inside baseball from Tim Jansen. He always gives us that. Tim Jansen, these wounds on John O'Keefe's, is it his right? I think it is right arm that came up again. So Dr. Scorty Bello, the medical examiner for the Commonwealth, when asked if they are cuts from broken plastic or glass, implying that it was the taillight that cut him, she says, and I quote, "It's possible." She also says these are not classic injuries associated with a pedestrian motor vehicle accident. So that's got to have you scratching your head. She seems to me to be more of a problem for the Commonwealth than helping the Commonwealth, even though she's working for the state.
I mean, if you have a dog, if you've ever had a dog or an animal, that's what it looks like. It looks like that was an attack by a dog, a scratch, or a bite. That doesn't look like what happens when a car hits you, okay? You get scratched and you get scrapes when you rub against a pavement, but that's not what that was. And I don't think they were able to prove that the tail, the lighting caused it, right? I've worked on cases where I've had clients that have hit people in cars, and these injuries are not consistent with what I've seen. It's just not.
Yeah, if I could jump in there just real quick about it, that's one of the things I was looking for in this case from Lally. I was expecting experts to be able to talk about and explain why he didn't have bruising to more parts of his body, considering where they allege he was hit here, to have his body launched. Okay. Some expert that could tell me the reason he didn't have bruising is because it was X degrees outside, and that stops your body's, system from being able to produce, a lot of fluid to where it would create that type of bruising. And like I said, I feel like that the experts is the second kind of pillar to fall out, right? You might be able to have one pillar go, and that was the integrity of the investigation. But when those experts, the medical examiner didn't come through and the accident reconstructionist didn't come through, I think that at that point, if the defense provides somebody that's competent, that can basically poke big enough holes in it, I felt like it was over. And then today that happened with David Green, I think his name was, explaining the Cellbrite data. What you have there is two very highly qualified people, battle of the experts. If it's a tie, typically it would go to the prosecution, right? And in my experience, right, they want to believe the side of law and order. So, but when it came to the accident reconstructionist, he didn't have a leg to stand on.
Yeah, by the way, that Cellbrite expert was talking about that search, the 2:27 a.m. search. We'll get to that. Go ahead, Jeff, and I'll get to that in a minute.
I thought I read in one of the articles today or yesterday where one of the witnesses said there was no dog DNA on the clothing. Or
yes,
anything.
That's correct.
So, again, I mean, I've seen one happen to me, and then I've seen other dogs being military dogs who've bitten people. That does not look like a dog bite to me. I'm just saying, I'm not an expert. I'm not going to claim to be an expert because it's not what I did. But in my experience, those didn't look like dog bites. And to me, when the witness said that there was no dog DNA, I just don't. I'm not going to go and say, okay, yeah, it's a dog bite now. I mean,
well, they didn't have the dog to contest the DNA, right? The dog disappeared.
They swabbed the arm, as far as I know.
I know, but the dog disappeared.
Well, it was
So even
rehomed.
if they got anything, they wouldn't compare it. They had nothing.
No, well, it was. They knew where it was rehomed to, so I'm not sure. If someone
Yeah.
out there knows for certain, please let me know. But the dog was rehomed to somewhere in Vermont. But speaking of that,
didn't Bella say she couldn't say it wasn't from an animal or a large animal bite?
Yeah,
that's her own witness. That's the medical examiner.
And the medical examiner for the defense, who was on the stand today, said that she believes it is a dog bite, and her testimony was whittled down in the voir dire process to just discussing that, and we'll get to that as well. But Jeff Wood, just back to you. So they cross-examined the medical examiner, and the defense was asking the medical examiner if it could be an injury from a claw. And she said yes. She said it's a possibility from the claw of an animal. She also asked if the laceration on the back, this is now Counselor Little for the defense, if the laceration to the back of the head was from a possible baseball bat, to which she says it's possible. The medical examiner also went on to say there are possible defensive wounds on John O'Keefe's hands. All of those things, I think, would go to the notion of a potential fight. But then, again, you see Bayou Babe saying pig DNA was found, not dog DNA. So, I mean, what do we make of all, right after all that, by the way, the Commonwealth rested around 10 this morning. But, I mean, I don't know, any three of you, what do we make of how to deal with these?
Hey, Joel, I got to jump. I got to go get Windsor and Georgie from their grooming.
How dare you?
It was great being on with you guys. Have a great weekend.
Tim, thank you. And thank you. Tell the breeders we say hello, or the groomer. I'm sorry.
Have a great weekend.
Have a good
Chase,
weekend.
Take care, Tim. Chase, the motion to dismiss here by Alan Jackson came up. Is that just SOP at this point in the trial? Do you have to do that?
Yep. It's malpractice if you don't, typically, but it's just almost just going through the motions. It's something that has to be done. There are the rare cases, frivolous claims do, get brought. Frivolous charges do get brought. Witnesses step up there and don't give you the information you need in order to establish all the elements of a crime, and it can become appropriate. But it's very rare that occurs.
By the way, America's favorite troll, right on cue. Modine, questions get tough, and the STS lawyers bail, just like Tim Jansen. He just rolled out of here. Jeff Wood. So they brought in a guy named Lucky Loughran. He was delivering pizzas for Chris Albert before switching over to becoming a plow driver for the Department of Public Works. And he said he reported to plow at 2:15 a.m. on the morning of the 29th. He said there was great visibility despite the snow. He saw no one on the front lawn. He made 2 passes and there was nothing there. And then he says he suddenly sees a Ford Edge parked on the street in front of the Alberts home around this time. He found it weird because the Alberts never had cars parked outside. He had to drive around the vehicle to get by. Loughran says, again, that he found it very strange that this car was there. What do you make of this? Is this just more reasonable doubt? Now jurors are asking themselves, what is this car doing there? Who does this car belong to? What, why is it outside on the curb during next to the curb during a snowstorm? Is that what this is all about?
I think it throws reasonable doubt, the continuous reasonable doubt. I just think, when you have the horrible witnesses that you did, I think the defense could almost rest immediately, I think. And it's why the defense, as you said, are probably going to be done by Monday, the latest Tuesday, closing arguments to the jury by Tuesday, Wednesday, right? That's what people are saying. Because I think that if they thought there needed to be more, the defense would have more. I don't think the prosecution proved beyond a reasonable doubt. I don't. I think, none of us were there. None of us were driving that night. Here's the one person that was. How close was he really looking at 2:45 in the morning? I've been out at night that late. I don't know if I'm looking that hard. So, but the point of the matter is I have to listen to him. I can't base on my personal experience of being out in surveillance at that kind of late at night, knowing, what am I seeing? What am I not looking at? I have to listen to him. And if he's showing that he's believable, I'm going to have to believe him. And that's the evidence I have. And that throws additional reasonable doubt into this whole trial.
Yeah. And
go ahead,
I thought that was good evidence as well. Of course, for the defense, they brought him. Okay. But I want the viewers out there to see if they can't suspend their bias real quick and just ask yourself, have you ever been driving home from work and started thinking about what you had to do the next day, your vacation coming up, something like that, and then park in front of your house and be like, oh my gosh, I can't remember any of the drive home, right? It's because you use something called procedural memory. You have like a thing you do over and over and over again. You basically block out a lot of some of the stuff that occurs. And a guy that's driving a snowplow in a blizzard that does it all the time, I would be listening to Surviving the Survivor on podcasts and watching old episodes and listening to that. That's what I'd be focused on if I were doing that in the middle of the night. So, I think it helps the defense, but I think it's easily kind of explainable as why you wouldn't see that. He's gone by hundreds of homes that night. There's been little blobs of different things that are dark in the snow, a bunch. So there's a perfectly good explanation for it. But
yeah, by the way, I'm
another nail in the coffin.
I'm gonna edit that out and use it as a soundbite. I'd be listening to Surviving Survivor. Andy School, who's from Detroit, and is a friend of the show, screaming at me. They never swabbed the arm, Joel. Was done all over the right sleeve per the tech. John's arm was never swabbed. Joel. All right, I'm sorry, Andy. And I think I remember you telling me that the other night. Please forgive me. I am human after all and sort of dumb. So those two things combined never make for, I don't know. Anyway, Jeff Wood, someone was asking if you don't believe that they are bites from a dog, do you have a theory about what those marks on the arm are, to put you on the spot for a moment?
I don't. My thought way back when I first heard about this case was maybe if he was drugged or if he was pushed or something happened on the ground where he got scratches like that. To me, dog biting coming in, you're going to see puncture wounds in the arm. And I'm not seeing, from the photos I've seen, I'm not seeing these puncture wounds and then a rip, right? I just see scratches. And my dogs jump on me all the time, getting my attention. The one was just saying, I have to go out. That's why I ran off for a second, right? To me, I just don't see a scratching, because I think I would see, I've never seen scratches like that from a dog when I've had fights with dogs, seen dogs attacking. It's just what I haven't seen. So, but again, I'm not the expert, so I'm not going to claim I'm an expert just because I think it isn't. Again, and this is where I want to say, the defense doesn't have to prove it with the dog. They just have to show reasonable doubt. So I don't think we're ever going to get that proof of this is what it was, right? So, and that's why I think you've got so much going on here with this case, because we have so many answers that we're not going to get to. I would love to have been from the ground and get to read everything and see everything to say, oh no, why did he take this case to go to trial? Why are we here? Because, what I look at right now, I just don't think he's done the prosecution very good here. And, it's tough, and it's a shame, because I think at the end of the day, we're going to have people who are going to be very happy. We're going to have people who are very angry, but I don't know if we're going to have true justice, because if she hasn't done this, and I don't think the prosecution is proving she did it. I don't see where you go from there. I know we have this FBI DOJ investigation going on. If they had proven that she had not done this, I cannot foresee the U.S. attorney reaching out to the district attorney saying, you got to stop this trial. We've already proved she didn't do it, right? So are there I know there's this case going on. I'm not on the public corruption squad. I'm not there. I'm thinking they're looking at it and saying, such a sloppy job. What were things done that are a civil rights type violation that we're going to come after? I don't see the FBI ever coming in and saying, okay, now we're going to take people and charge them with murder. That's not what I see here.
Well, Jeff, real quick, Governor Maura Healey came out. She was asked about this trial and was basically disgusted by what she was seeing. She didn't comment on the facts or evidence of the case, which she shouldn't be doing. But do you think, and we do know the feds are obviously investigating this, at the very least, do you think that they're going to look into the Massachusetts State Police and require them to either do more training or whatever have you? Because it seems like some of these state troopers were ill prepared for this investigation, as well as the local Canton Police Department.
The only time I think you could say that would have to come from DOJ. That's not an FBI. That would come from DOJ out of Washington, D.C. And they would have to do an investigation where they're coming in with, using FBI, using the DOJ, OIG inspectors, right, to do something, come up with a finding and say, hey, this has to be done. I think what you're going to see is the governor coming in and having the attorney general for the state of Massachusetts saying, we need to do better. This is unacceptable behavior by Trooper Proctor. In my mind, at least right now, you've got a case to go after Proctor and put him on the, as we call in the FBI, when you do something serious, put him on the beach where he's suspended without pay for some time, right? I mean, sending text messages saying, I can't find any nudes yet. I mean, that is just completely unprofessional. It's degrading to women. That's not what law enforcement officers are supposed to do. And don't get me wrong, it happens. People do stupid things, but if you're getting to the point where you look at local police departments, state police departments, if you're assigned to the homicide unit, that's one of the most sought after units for that department. Why do we have somebody who's acting that unprofessional in a case?
That's a great point. That it's a highly sought after position. Yeah.
So to me, that's why the prosecution is not going to recover, because you put them on. That's what the jury's going to remember, right? Here's Proctor. Where's Karen Reed's nudes to my friends while I'm searching her phone? And that the defense is going to hammer, and that's where the jury is probably going to go in and keep remembering and say, we can't believe a thing he said, because there was no good explanation other than, oh, I made a mistake. That's not a mistake.
And that was to his, that was to his friends.
Yeah,
not other law enforcement, where you're just locker room talk at work. Those are people who have no business knowing any information like that. Yeah,
absolutely.
Jeff, I'm going to take you everyone off track for just a minute, because Jeff's an expert in this area. But Jeff Wood, we've been covering this Rachel Morin case. She's a mom of 5 who was murdered on a Maryland hiking trail. Well, using DNA, they just arrested a suspect, and they flew him from Tulsa back to Harford County in Maryland, and he's now being held on no bond. What's interesting, Jeff, is you were in El Salvador. He's an El Salvador Salvadorian national, and he is purported to be a gang member, I assume, of MS-13. They say he killed a woman in El Salvador and came up here and murdered Rachel. Just want to get your thoughts on that, since we have you. The bail hearing was today, and I've been talking to the family through this entire process. Another victim of a hideous crime. What are your thoughts, just having handled gangs? And I know you were dealing with MS-13, hearing that this guy came here, had murdered a woman in El Salvador, and now gets caught for this crime and possibly more down the road.
I find it. Yes, we know he's affiliated with the gang. Odds are it's MS-13, but he could be 18th Street. I mean, that is the other large gang out of El Salvador. They war. So I've been trying to reach out to some people I know to see if it was MS-13 or 18th Street. It's been atypical in my casework that we've seen MS-13 and 18th Street target Americans for these kind of crimes. It's typically been fellow Central Americans that they've targeted in the past. But I've said, going back to 2016, 2017 timeframe, that will change. We're going to start seeing some of these gang members that typically target their own spread out. And here's a perfect case, an example of that happening, where when he first got to the country, he did that home invasion, sexually assaulted or tried to sexually assault the young girl in the house, and she fled. But thank God they had DNA there. They had video evidence, and then the DNA from this woman who was murdered and raped in Maryland, and they tied it all the way back to El Salvador. So I mean, they were able to do that, but it goes to show again the violence of not just MS-13, but of gangs in general, and that we always have to be cautious of our surroundings, no matter where we are. Right? When today, you look at gangs and they're more emboldened now than they have been in the past, and so it's just a shame that there's so much that's going on here where you can bring up so many different things of what we can discuss. And again, I don't think some of the discussions are, I think you get into too much political stuff instead of just focusing on the victim and what happened here.
Yeah. And it's already being heavily politicized, this murder, but I'm talking to the family and they are devastated, as you'd imagine. We're going to slowly but quickly wrap up day 29 of testimony as we head in Monday to day 30 of testimony in the Karen Reed trial. I'm just going to run us through some of the stuff that happened the rest of the day. Dr. Marie Russell has an unbelievable resume. She went to MIT for a year or so before switching schools. She became a police officer and then a medical doctor, an ER doctor. Well, she, as we just talked about, took the stand and said that she believes the attack on John O'Keefe's arm is from a large dog. Adam Lally, the ADA on cross, pointed out that canine DNA was not found on the arm. And then there was this whole thing about basically trying to say that she perjured herself over the amount of time she had a Boston Globe subscription, which was kind of petty. And a lot of people thought that Adam Lally was just sort of losing his mind, for lack of a better phrase at that point. They hit lunch and then they come back with a person that Chase was talking about. He is the defense cell phone expert, Richard Green. He tells us that at 12:31 a.m. that John O'Keefe's phone data shows he took 36 steps at 2:27. This is the key. So two Commonwealth experts, Chase, say that this search for House Long to Die in the Cold, which was a typo, was done at 6-something in the morning, which would put it after John O'Keefe's body was found, which would be implying that in a panic, maybe Karen Reed was trying to figure out how long would it have taken him to die. But today's expert, this guy, Rick Green, says that the search actually happened right then and there at 2:27 a.m. And it was what he says, and I quote here, a deleted state. David Yannetti asks him, do you have an opinion on how those calls were deleted from Jen McCabe's phone? And he says those would have been user deleted. So, Chase, what does the jury do here? You've got two experts for the Commonwealth saying one thing and an expert for the defense saying something totally contrary. How do you square this if you're juror number 3?
Well, as a juror, I can't say, but I will say as an attorney, what I'm looking for in an expert is somebody who's highly qualified. Okay, we had both of the experts here that were highly qualified. Then it becomes how effective they are at actually conveying their expertise, okay, in a way in which is easily understandable. And I think that both of them did a very good job of that. Like I watched the prosecution's expert, highly qualified, and it was noted today in David Green's testimony that at some point he had to call for Cellbrite for customer support, and Alan Lally indicated that it was actually their experts team that he was reaching out to for help on how to properly interpret Cellbrite data. But what you do is basically whoever is able to convey their opinion in a way that you can understand, and whoever is more convincing. In my opinion, both of them have very, very reasonable explanations that I could understand to the degree I could understand it for why they base their opinion on what they did. But I'm not going to understand how certain files are kept and what it takes to actually become user deleted versus something that happens just as a matter of course in the process of doing different things with your phone, how your phone deletes text. Some people have it set to where it deletes after 30 days. Some have it set for different times. But in that case, it's a battle of the experts, and I think that it was a tie in my view of what was presented. But I would say it was very interesting in him talking about how they had 3 clocks inside of an iPhone, and the different apps can choose which one to use. And it turns out that I think there was about a 3 or 4 minute difference in the different clocks. And Waze chose one, and then other parts of the phone chose different times. The Apple Health data chose different times, but it made it very problematic for the prosecution's case if you were influenced by David Green today.
Yeah, exactly. It depends which expert you are choosing. Look at this. My friend Aniello. This is what I love about non-mainstream media. Aniello, who I will still respect and love, comes onto my Twitter feed and is constantly saying disparaging things to me, putting me down, calling me a grifter, even I think saying that I'm exploiting my mother, my own beloved mother, who has a very important story to be told. But Aniello, you're welcome in my chat. Despite that, we welcome you and love having you here. It's just funny that you're here, but I'm glad you are here. And please hang around, and hopefully we can. I won't say kiss and make up, but maybe we can make up, because I'm a married man, and my wife will get upset with me. I want to thank R. Timothy Jansen. It is the first letter of his name, the letter R, but it is also O-U-R, Timothy Jansen. He's a partner in the firm Jansen Davis that bears his name. He's also a former federal prosecutor. And then we have Chase Hawk, the man with the sultry Southern accent, born in Birmingham, Alabama, but he lives in Augusta, where they've got that famous golf tournament where they make him wear those really ugly green jackets. But I guess I would take one if I needed one. Chase Hawk, you need to read up on Donna Adelson, because we're going to be covering that extensively up in Tallahassee, and I'd love to have your expertise on that case and tell your partners as well. Just want to get your final thoughts and also your prediction. Is this a guilty and not guilty or a possible hung jury? What say you?
I think that this is going to be a not guilty. I think they'll stay back there just long enough to make it look like they considered everything, probably a day or two. But I think a lot of these people's minds have already been made up. They don't like not only the evidence that was presented by the prosecution, they don't like who it's coming from and how it was presented. They don't like how Lally presented it. They don't like the people that gave it to them, Trooper Proctor. And it doesn't amount to what the judge is going to explain to them as the standard in order to hold somebody responsible for second-degree murder in Massachusetts.
By the way, no Phil and Scott, obviously, today. I saw a young Phil on 48 Hours last night, off topic. I need to see that. But they said this case is such a mess that neither of them even want to comment on it. They want to keep themselves out of the circus, and I don't blame them. We'll be back, of course, next week. We will be back next week with Phil and Scott and Aniello. If I am mixing you up, and maybe I am, but I don't think I am, then I sincerely apologize. And I will kiss and make up if I am mistaking you. What does Carm think? Carm thinks, by the way, she's in the next room over. She thinks this is an absolute disaster for the Commonwealth. She does not think that Karen Reed is guilty in this. That's Carm's take. And to be honest, we've argued over it because I, for a long time, did think Karen Reed is responsible. And there's a part of me that still thinks she is, but I don't think it was ever intentional. If it was her that did it, please send me the hate email now. But I'm just being honest. And but I also think something for sure is being covered up. And maybe I'm just too naive and too innocent to believe that police could have killed this guy and gotten away with it. It would be very disturbing for me. Maybe my little virgin ears don't want to hear that worst case scenario, but we will find out. Jeff Wood, meanwhile, retired FBI special agent out of Boston. He focused on gangs and gang violence. That's why we just asked him about the 18th Street gang and MS-13. A gang member, as you just heard from El Salvador, is being held on no bail or bond right now for the murder of Rachel Morin. And a big thank you and gratitude for his service as a military member, and also to both his parents. Jeff Wood, guilty, not guilty, hung jury, your final thoughts?
I think she's going to be found not guilty. I don't think the prosecution did their job. I don't think they have beyond reasonable doubt, and she'll be found not guilty because of that. So I think that's what we're going to see.
There you go. And we are going to probably find this out very soon. Look at this. Heather Hegg here from Brandeis, my alma mater, grad school in 93. I graduated undergrad in 91. So we were maybe there at the same time. I have no idea. But there you go. And it's in Waltham, Mass, not far from where all this is going down. We are going to be back. By the way, we're doing a live podcast from the Oxford Exchange. It's a fun little bookstore in Tampa this Sunday at 3:30. Please tune in if you can. If you're in Tampa, come say hi to Carm and check out my custom-made kicks that people made for me with our podcast logo on my sneaks. And then Monday, we're back. We're following Karen Reed, and I think the jury's going to get this case after closing arguments on Tuesday. And man, oh man, we're going to be all over that, and it is going to be a wild sight to behold, seeing or hearing and watching that verdict being read, which could happen as soon as Tuesday. So everyone, please I hate these comments. Space Coast ruining my weekend. I was 5 in 93, Joel. LOL. Well, Space Coast, you have quickly caught up to me, and you're catching up faster and faster every day. My son, who is 5, was asking grandma today, who's almost 85, how old she's going to be when he's 50. And I said, I had to break the news. She's going to be 135 years old. He couldn't even understand it. So it was a crazy conversation that depressed the hell out of me. But now I'm happy. It was great to meet Chase Hawk. Great to have Jeff Wood on. Love you, America. Love you, Augusta, Georgia. And love you, Alabama and Boston and Canton, Mass. And please, let's think about justice for John O'Keefe. Chase and Jeff, stick around for 1 second.